Welcome to Bird for Joy, a show about discovering all the different ways that bird watching can bring joy into our lives. I'm Candilynn Fite, your gracious host and fledgling birder. Here at Bird for Joy, we focus on listening and watching the birds around us, being curious and learning what the birds have to teach us about joy, life, and ourselves. So grab your favorite beverage, settle on your perch, and let's get into today's episode. Welcome back to Bird for Joy. One of my most joyous birding moments so far is the month and a half I spent observing a fledgling barred owl in the woods behind my home. From the first sighting with his downy fluff on the top of his head, his pathetic whiny screech, and dark eyes that seemed too big for his face, to seeing him take flight for the first time, instead of dropping from his perch and then scrambling, wings all aflutter, back up into his tree. When I would arrive in his area each evening, he would swoop on silent wings out from the deep forest, perching in a tree not too far from me. I called him Chauncey, which means luck or good fortune, and because he seemed to be on his own, I thought he was lucky to be alive. I would watch him preen and hunt through my binoculars, and when I would head back to the house, I'd bid him farewell, thinking each time that it would be my last time to see him. Then there were the very rare occurrences when the little stinker would show up at my house after dark and perch in the tree across from our driveway. He'd screech until I went outside and acknowledged him. If I hadn't experienced his visits here at the house, I wouldn't have believed it happened. But at this point, I began to feel like my presence was not good for him. And though we live out in the country, my house is not set too far from the road. Besides, owls in the wild should not form attachments to humans. So, against what my inner child wanted, I decided to take a few days off from visiting him. Now, those few days spanned over a weekend that my husband's family came up to their weekend home, situated a couple acres from ours. Quick backstory. My husband and I own the front 4¼ acre of a 22-acre plot. The rest of the acreage is shared by his siblings. So technically, the woods that I birdwatch in belongs to his brother and sisters. Now, during that weekend, they had invited company up, mowed the back pasture, did a bunch of bulldozer work, cutting large pathways in the backwoods, and then spent 2 days shooting at targets. Pretty much all day long. Unfortunately, the last target hill stands about 10 feet from Chauncey's perching tree. The pathways they bulldozed zigzagged throughout the dense wooded area that he would fly in and out of. I know this because on Monday evening after they went back to Houston, I walked back there. The pathways were lovely, winding in and out and through the forest, but so many young trees were bulldozed over or chopped down by their tractor work. I noticed 3 disturbing things straight away the moment I neared the area. There was no bird chatter or singing. The mama raccoon and her 3 young babies I normally see foraging on leftover corn from my in-laws' deer feeder were not there. And the thing that caused tears to spring to my eyes was Chauncey was nowhere to be seen or heard. I wandered the area for a solid hour, my heart lodged in my throat. I'd never heard the woods so quiet before. I'd never seen them so still. The worst part is, I couldn't do or say anything about it, because the truth is, it isn't my land. That was back in July, and since then, I still have not seen or heard Chauncey. I'd love to believe that he's still back there living his best owl life, but honestly, I think he's gone. Now, not to sound too woo-woo, but I believe the surreal experience with Chauncey was some sort of gift from the universe, and he is definitely my spark bird. My encounters with him were special and rare. How many people have the opportunity to watch a young owl nearly every day for a month and a half? The entire experience ignited something in me that is so difficult to explain, something more than what I had already felt while birdwatching, more profound, more exciting. Being in his presence brought out my inner child, making me curious to know more about owls and the rest of the avian world. Chauncey, the barred owl, took my newfound passion for birdwatching to an extremely high level, one I couldn't deny or walk away from. If you've heard me talk about Chauncey before, earlier in the podcast, you may be wondering why I'm sharing my encounter with him again so soon, and why I'm sharing the story of how and why he seemed to have disappeared, or why the tone of this episode focuses more on frustration rather than my usual joyful birding experiences. Now, where I may not have had the right to speak up about what was done with the property adjoining mine, I do have the right to voice my opinion on what I consider the destruction of wildlife habitat. We all know what happens to wildlife when their habitat is eradicated. Wildlife is forced to move, migrate. The birds, raccoons, rabbits, foxes, bobcats, and coyotes are forced to relocate, upsetting the balance of the ecosystem they move into. I just watched it happen in my own backyard, literally. Sometimes we have to speak up, speak out. We have to take a stand, especially for something as innocent and helpless as wildlife. And right now, I am taking a stand. I stand for the barred owl. Maybe you've heard or seen articles about how the big, bad, bullying barred owl is moving in on spotted owl territory in the northwestern United States. Or the recent article from the city of Cambridge about a barred owl attacking several people. Now, I'm not claiming that these articles are untrue, but I've done quite a bit of research on this very subject, and I think you might be surprised to hear what I've discovered. The barred owl isn't the villain some of these articles are making the species out to be. Tune in next week when I take a deep dive into several of these stories that have popped up in the news recently. If you are enjoying the show, I would love it if you would follow or subscribe, rate, review, and then let others know about the podcast so we can continue to build a community of like-minded birders. A big shout out to composer Jonathan Boyle for his cheerful show music called Plucking Happy. The spoken lyrics were written and read by me, and the full version with lyrics will follow this episode. Until next time, stay chirpy, my friends, and get outside, feel the sun upon your face and the wind in your hair, and bird for joy's sake. Bird for joy's sake, when you're needing more, a new beginning, feeling lost, alone, or blue, go into nature. Stroll to the melodious tunes of birdsong. Let it refresh your soul, fill your heart, lift your spirits. Yes, bird, for joy's sake. Witness the winged wonders, flitting, fluttering, playing hide and tweet. Is there anything else so sweet? I think not. We'll save for the chitter-chatter of my own nestlings as they filled my early days, but sigh no more, for they have long left the nest, and I now strive to find myself once again, discovering new things that I do best. Bird, for joy's sake, for our feathered friends have much joy to share, and it doesn't cost a dime, only time. And I don't know about you, but I am willing to give, to have a chance to live out my days, filled with curiosity, hope, and wonder, learning patience, the art of slowing down and being fully present, living in the moment, something I have long strived to achieve. Bird,
for joy's sake and keep looking up. Let their constant cheer infect you, their tenacity provide you with lessons of never giving up and looking on the brighter side of life. Prepare for entertainment with their quirky, chirpy silliness. Oh my, so much cuteness, happiness, and whimsy. You can't help but smile. And suddenly you'll discover worries cease, frustrations fade, chaos calms, and troubles melt away like snow in the spring. You will find yourself looking up and forward into the horizon, surrounded by song, hope, and happiness perched in your heart, feeling renewed and fulfilled. Go out into nature, take a stroll, let the avifauna rejuvenate your soul, and bird for joy's sake.